Joining me now, first class father, Jon Macaskill. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Hey, thanks, man. Happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, let's start it right here. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I've got two. I've got a almost 3-year-old little girl named Mia. She turns three in March, and then I've got an almost 11-month-old little boy. So I'm 42 years old and getting a late start in the game, but I'm loving it, man. It's tiring, but it's a lot of fun. They are the light of my life for sure.
Yeah, very cool. Now, did you guys do any type of gender reveal to find out what you guys were having, or did you wait to the end?
We did do the gender reveal on both. The first one, we did it several months in with the ultrasound. The second one we did, I think it was like the 17-week point with a blood like a blood draw, if I remember correctly. But yeah, we did. And then for my little girl, so now she's like almost 2 years old. When we identified that my son was on the way, we had a cake that was blue on the inside to reveal to her what she was having as a younger sibling. So she knew that she was going to have a little brother. And just recently, she asked, "Hey, I want a little sister now too." But I don't know. We'll see whether that's in the cards. We're gonna let our faith and life play that one out for us. But we're
Yeah,
not.
you might as well
We're not.
break the tie.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, if you could, Jon, please just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure, man. So I am active duty Navy, wrapping up my Navy career here this year, later in August. Been Navy SEAL since 2003. Prior to that, I was enlisted in the Navy, then went to the Naval Academy, and then went the SEAL route. Uh, been on the East Coast and the West Coast doing that, and then now I'm starting as I'm looking to transition out of the military, starting to try to figure out what the next life is going to look like. And I think that's going to look like me being a mindfulness and meditation teacher. I'm working right now with a nonprofit called Veterans Path, and that's what Veterans Path does is we teach mindfulness and meditation to vets to help them rediscover a sense of peace, acceptance, and transformation. Uh, Peace, acceptance, transformation, and honor. Path. That's where the path in our name comes from. Um, and then I'm just trying to kind of find a happier and healthier work-life balance as I'm transitioning out of the military. My focus is more on my family and what's going to be good for us long term than where it has been before. Not that it wasn't on my family; it was just in a different location in the stack of priorities. So hoping the rest of my life they're going to be right there at the top.
Yeah, very cool, and I wish you much success with that. And I know I can only imagine the transition, what it must be like after a long, extensive career with the Navy SEALs, then coming into this. Well, so you waited until later in life, obviously, here to start having kids. How did becoming a
Yeah.
dad kind of change your perspective on life?
Oh man, yeah, it was earth shattering, definitely changing for sure. So I really didn't grasp how much it was going to change my life until my daughter was born. I think my wife realized how much it was going to change our life a lot earlier than I did. And then I helped to actually catch both of our kids when they were born. Um, and literally when my daughter Mia landed in my hands, I was like, holy cow, this is not just somebody that I'm responsible for today or the next week or the next couple of months. This is somebody I'm responsible for the rest of her life, the rest of my life at least, if things work out, right? And that's when I was like, all right, Jon, you've got to start getting serious about uh, my life so that I am better prepared to be a good father. Um, set some things up for afterwards when I get out of the military so that I am around more, so that I can be there for when she, at the time it was just her, but when she's going through school, when she's preparing for her first relationships. Um, yeah, so it all flashed before my eyes right then and there. And then, just about 2 years, almost to the day, my son was due on her birthday, but he came a few weeks early. Then I got the other side of the coin. Now I've got this little girl, And I'm thinking about as a father what I have to do for a little girl, and then I've got a little boy, and I'm like, okay, well, now there's another side of things, because as a father you have to be a role model to a boy. You got to be a role model to a little girl too. But there's specific things that come with both sides of that coin. So yeah, here I am, 42, and trying to figure out how to be a dad, man. But I've got people like yourself and some good friends and family that have set a good example, and I'm hoping that I can follow suit.
Yeah, good stuff. And I know you mentioned there mindfulness and meditation coach. Now, I've had a few SEALs. I know I've had Mark Devine on the show before. He's a
Yeah,
guy that mentions a lot of the meditation stuff like that. When
sure.
did you first become interested in and start practicing the mindfulness, the meditation, and stuff that you teach now?
Sure, man. I got into it about 2.5 years ago. Really, I got introduced to it by a psychologist that I was seeing because I was struggling with some anxiety and depression, and and while I was actually holding my little girl, I realized that I was focusing more on some stuff in my past that I couldn't change, or thinking about some things in the future that were not even that important. I was sitting here holding this miracle, and what I was thinking about wasn't that important. And I went to see the psychologist, told him what I was dealing with, and he said, "Hey, why don't you try some meditation and some mindfulness practices?" And I mean, I'd heard of Mark Devine and the work he had been doing, and it's great work, but I just hadn't really delved into it very much. Now the psychologist mentioned it. I'd heard about it some other places, but in my mind, the stereotype of meditators was a didn't fit who I was. I didn't have anything against that stereotype, but it's just not who I was. So I was like, I'm not going to go and tell my guys that I'm meditating for 15, 20 minutes a day. That's embarrassing. And the guy's like, no, it's not at all embarrassing. This is something you should do. Here's the science and benefits behind it. Here's some very high performing individuals that do it. You should try it out. So I tried it out for 2 weeks, and went back to him, and I was like, hey man, it's not working. And he laughed at me, and he's like, well, that's like going to the gym for a couple of weeks and thinking you're going to come out looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I was like, all right, touche, got it, man. So went back for a couple months, started to see changes in who I was and how I was dealing with stress, started paying a lot more attention to that little girl that I was holding, and really appreciating life and the miracle that it is. And once I started doing that, I also met with one of my mentors here in the military who's like, hey, you've got to start figuring out what it is you want to do with your life after you leave the military, after you retire. So I started looking at the different fields that are out there. I started looking at commercial real estate and private equity and finance, and all great jobs, all great work, nothing against them, but it wasn't anything that was really resonating with me. And meantime, I'm sitting there meditating in the mornings and doing my reading about meditation and the effects of mindfulness. And I was like, hey, I could do this. I could share this with people for a living and really get a sense of satisfaction in that I'm helping people out, and I'm doing something that I love. So that's how I kind of got into it. And then about a year and a half ago, really started pursuing it heavily and finding out what is out there. And that's how I found Veterans Path. And that's how I'm doing what I'm doing now, man.
Yeah, and I think, like you said there, we have this stereotype when we think about meditation. We think of like a Tibetan monk sitting in a cave somewhere with like the robe on and the whole bit. And it's kind of like, for
Yeah,
myself,
exactly.
I've used it myself almost as, I mean, I'm a very, I keep God first in my life. I'm a very, spiritual oriented person. And I use meditation as a form of prayer is really what I do. I kind of mix and mingle the two of them together. And
Sure.
I like another SEAL that I've had on the show, Tom Shea. His
Oh
book is
yeah.
is about your inner dialogue and stuff. So like when you
Right.
marry those two together, and I think you start, like for myself anyway, just speaking for what I've done, especially with my show here, a lot of people will always ask me like, how do you get all these guys on your show? And I think if you spend some time in thought and in your imagination, in your meditation, with seeing, like putting out that blueprint that you want, it has a way of coming towards you in a sense, like as you start to really make those images realistic. So I mean, I use
Sure
like a
does.
form of meditation, prayer, and inner dialogue as a combination, and it's really made some big changes in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I'm teaching meditation, I do it on the side, teaching it to corporate teams. One, because it does help to put, some extra money in my pocket. But more importantly for me is I feel that it can get people to be happier and healthier at work. And a lot of the time I get the question, is prayer meditation and is meditation prayer? And I think there's a lot of overlap. If you can kind of imagine a Venn diagram with several circles, you've got meditation in one circle, you've got mindfulness in another, and those overlap. And then honestly, I think prayer is a third circle in that Venn diagram that overlaps with the other two. There's definitely an intersection there for sure.
Now, how is this? I'm curious because now, jumping into the parenthood, the fatherhood game here, has the meditation and the mindfulness been able to help you along with your SEAL training to get through those early
Oh
stages of
yeah,
childhood?
totally, man. There were times when my little girl crying would stress me out a lot, and now I've got the two of them crying at times, and I just take a breath for myself, reset, and be like, hey, you know what? This isn't the end of everything. If I get all stressed out, that's just going to stress them out more. They're going to sense that, and then that's going to kind of feed the chaos. Um, my wife and I have also started teaching my little girl, who's now old enough to actually understand. Hey, look, settle down, take a deep breath, and then breathe out real slow. And she obviously doesn't understand the physiology behind what's happening, but she understands that's her calming down mechanism. It's going to tap into that parasympathetic nervous system and really calm her down. And I see it like an instant change when she's throwing these little tantrums. And I just hold her by the shoulders and I'm like, Mia, take a couple of deep breaths, and then I breathe with her, and she calms down. She goes from beet red in the face, with tears in her eyes, to this, beautiful little girl. Well, she's beautiful when she's beet red with tears in her eyes, but she calms down back into the Mia that is rational. So yeah, it's totally helped me. It's helped them. And then not only in dealing with stress, but also appreciating the little moments that I probably would not have appreciated before because I was too wrapped up in other things that were going on in life.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and we had our three boys first, then we got the girl on the end there. So it was quite a switch for us to go from but we finally got her on four. If we didn't get her on four, we'd have five by now, but we got her, and she runs the show over here. But one of the things
No doubt.
I'm not sure how much of this you've gotten into just yet, but I know that they start young with the screen time. I mean, it becomes a battle as they get older for sure. Are you
Yeah.
allowing your kids any of the screen time? Are they doing any of the YouTube yet? Do they have the iPads? How are you handling that so far?
I do hate to admit that there are times when me and mom give in to that because sometimes we need some mom and dad time too, right? And we will put them in front of an iPad or just pop a movie on the TV. But we try to make that it's not a habit. Um, it is something that they enjoy, but it's not something that we give to them all the time. We prefer to read a book to them or take a break and take a walk outside. Or we just lost our we had three dogs, and we ended up losing our last one this last weekend. But we used to go and play with the dogs, um, so at the park or something. But we try to minimize screen time, but I also want to be realistic in that it's not something that you can eliminate completely. And I mean, I think there's sometimes goodness to it too. If you're watching something all the time, I think that negates their imagination. They can't really imagine things themselves. But if you give them just enough to kind of stimulate that imagination, I think sometimes it's a good thing. So it's a fine balance. I don't know if we figured it out exactly, but yeah, I'm definitely not
Yeah,
completely against it.
I don't think anybody's figured it out. It's very, very complicated just because we're, as adults, we're constantly using it ourselves. And it's hard to set that example when so much of our own life and business revolves around the technology, the phones, and the screens. So
Absolutely.
it's hard to lead
Absolutely.
by example for myself. Yeah, I know that.
Yep.
Um, and what about as far as discipline, John? What type of disciplinarian? Are you a spanker, timeout guy? How do you handle that so far with the little ones?
I'm a little bit of both. I mean, not with I haven't had to do any spanking with my little boy yet, but we'll pop our daughter on the butt. I mean, I was raised getting spankings, and I didn't ever think that was abuse. If if some people believe that that's abuse, hey, that's more power to them. If they can get their kids to listen to them completely without corporal punishment, then hey, that's more power to them. But I was raised getting spankings. Don't I definitely don't ever do it out of rage. I hope to, I really like to think that I don't get to that rage point anymore. But if I am trying to teach her a lesson, I've asked her things time and time again. She's not going through the timeout. It's not working through the timeout. Then I may just pop that butt a little bit, but not hard and not in a fit of rage. And she knows what it's for. Like I've seen when, hey, I tell her, hey, look, if you don't do X, Y, or Z by the count of 3, you're going to get a pop on the butt. And she instantly does whatever I need her to do. Like if it's go to bed or I don't know, get ready to go take a tubby or whatever. So yeah, we do administer a little bit of discipline in the Macaskill household, but it's not too bad. At least I don't think so.
Yeah, and I think, of course, John, I think there's such a big difference between spanking a child and beating a child, and I think a lot of people
Sure.
like will interpret it like, oh, you're abusing the child, and there's a very drastic difference between the two. And I think as the kids get to a certain age too, it becomes a little bit less effective. But I think in those early stages before they can communicate with us, and I think it's a very effective tool to use. So
Yeah, agree. And like you said, as long as you're there's definitely a difference between beating and spanking. And I think the difference comes in why you're doing it and how you're doing it. I'm doing it to discipline my child, and I'm doing it with a calm head. I know what's going on. I am not in a fit of rage, and I'm not doing it just because I had a bad day at work. That's I think the big difference.
And how for you so far has it been? I know you said you're transitioning out in August, I believe. How
Yep.
has that been so far, and what kind of plans do you have here for yourself in the future?
Yeah, man, we've got big plans. So the reason I am sitting in my car while I'm speaking to you is my wife and I just downsized from 2 big cars to 1 very small car, and I am driving around picking the kids up, picking my wife up from work, kind of doing a little shuffle there. But we did that to get a little practice in owning 1 car, because when I retire in August, we're going to jump in our RV. We own an RV that my wife did a great job gutting and redoing the entire interior. She went like Chip and Joanna Gaines style, like redid the entire interior. It looks phenomenal. But our plans are to drive that RV around the country for 6 or 7 months, and really get to see parts of this country we haven't seen, and really explore this beautiful country that we call home. Because I've seen a lot of America, but I sometimes feel like I've seen a lot more of other countries being in the military than I have of America. And then we're, most likely not going to have an opportunity like this because my kids are not of age to go to school yet. If I wait 5 or 6 years to do this, it's never going to happen. So we're going to take the opportunity while we have it, get out, see America. Hopefully my, then 3-year-old little girl will remember some of this trip. My little boy is just going to have to see the pictures afterwards, because I'm sure he won't remember it. But it's going to be a heck of an experience. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Hopefully, I hope you document that on social media so we could follow along with that. It sounds like an awesome
Absolutely.
adventure.
That's the
Last
plan, for sure.
last thing I want to hit you with here, John. I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast. You're fairly new into the game here. I'm curious to hear your response. What type of advice do you have for those new dads or for those about to be dads who are out there listening?
Sure, man. I am definitely new to the game. I mean, I'm 3 years in, but I'd still definitely consider that new to the game. But what I like to think is what I learned in that mindfulness and meditation, kind of going through that and now teaching it and still practicing it regularly, is to really appreciate the time we have. I mean, yes, it's only been 3 years, but holy cow, it's been 3 years already that my daughter was born, and here we are. I mean, I can't believe how quickly time goes. And if we don't stop and really look at, again, the miracles that we have before us and enjoy the miracles that our children are to us, the teachers that they are to us, then we're gonna blink and we're gonna miss it, and then we're gonna look back with a lot of regret. So I guess the piece of advice that I have for your listeners, for your audience, is really appreciate the kids for not only who they are, but what they are to us, miracles and teachers to us. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Jon Macaskill, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, brother. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciated it.